Welcome back. We got these brand new polls out this morning showing Donald Trump at the top of the GOP race once again. Take a look at these polls. Trump, 28% support, followed by Carson at 18%. Cruz and Rubio still doing well, 14% even. Bush down there at 5%. Christie also at 3%. These poll numbers say it all, and this is after the ISIS conversation had become that much harsher. Ed Rollins.
Trump clearly shows strength, and the country is looking desperately for strength, and they contrast it with a very weak president. So my sense is the Paris disaster helped him because he was the guy out there saying it wouldn't happen on my watch. You know, whether that's true or not, so regardless.
Yeah.
And I think the guy who's really dropped off the charts is Carson, who clearly didn't know where the places were on the map, let alone who our allies were. And I think to a certain extent people are taking a second look at that.
This is interesting, you guys. This is how the candidates would fare against Hillary Clinton in this most recent poll. This is just brand new. We're showing this this morning for the first time. This is how the candidates would fare against Hillary Clinton in a general election. Mary.
Well, I think those polls reflect the post-Paris that Americans want someone who's strong, who's going to defeat the terrorist threat and really wage the war on terror, not these half measures that President Obama has taken. Two things, Maria. I think the next GOP debate is going to separate the professionals from the amateurs. I think Rand Paul should drop out of this race right now. I think Ted Cruz deserves to be scrutinized for voting against terrorist surveillance message and dumbing down and really restricting the information that the NSA has. And then secondly, on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton, you've seen her already start to move to the right. She went from "This is not America's fight" in the last Democratic debate to a speech at the Council on Foreign Relations where she's calling for President Obama's approach plus a little more. Expect her to move farther to the right. It's important for Republicans to remind voters of what her record is of misjudging Putin, missing the Arab Spring, Benghazi, leading from behind in Libya, and all the other decisions that she's taken. But the Republicans have to remind the voters now before she moves to the center.
A lot of people, Judy, felt that her speech at the Council on Foreign Relations was a third Obama term, that it was very much in step with what the president has been doing.
I really disagree. When she talks about creating safe zones, those are Republican ideas now. These have come from the Republican candidates. She is moving to the right. She is moving to where she naturally is. What was unnatural for Hillary Clinton was to be President Obama's very weak Secretary of State.
So why didn't she resign?
Well,
you don't,
and really,
you
what's
don't resign when you're
Hillary
Secretary of State.
What is Hillary Clinton's natural position? I'd refer everybody to former Defense Secretary Bob Gates' book, where he says that she made her vote against the surge in Iraq based on politics. Politics is what Hillary Clinton is about. There's no principle there, and that's why she would be such a dangerous president.
Let's not misunderstand. We've talked about her moving to the right. She is not moving to the right. She's moving a little bit to the center. She was out there with Bernie Sanders, who is a socialist, as far left as you can.
From the all the way on the left.
She's a little bit to the right of Obama, but she's certainly not to where her husband was, and she's certainly not to where our defense people want her to be. And I think at the end of the day, she can read polls. Every one of these people are beating her, including Trump and Carson. So at the end of the day, she's got to basically do something to adjust to present herself as a leader, not the third term.
Ed, she was in favor of arming Syrian moderates, quote, moderates, pragmatists, whatever we want to call them, 3 years ago. And her president said, no, I'm not going to do that against the advice of his military.
She's also running away from her vote on Iraq.
Yes,
and at the end of the day, you know, she basically is going to do whatever is political.
It's such a surprise.
Is she disavowing the Iran nuclear deal?
Well,
no.
Well,
she's
this is
not.
an important point. I'm glad you brought this up.
And is she calling for a major troop presence on the ground to protect the Kurds and the Sunnis in Iraq? Is she calling for a comprehensive strategy like the one General Keane just outlined? No, she's not. I'd look to Republicans like Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina. These are the people who are outlining the kind of combined political and military strategy that we need to defeat this threat. This is an apocalyptic cult that stretches from North Africa to the Middle East to Afghanistan and into parts of Asia. This is the fight of our time, and we need someone with a strategy.
And are you going to fight that alone without the Russians and without the Iranians?
I don't think the Russians and the Iranians have our interests in mind. They're not our allies.
We have one point of common interest, the need to defeat ISIS. Diplomacy is all about making coalitions when your interests coincide.
I don't want to give up all my objections to the Russians on Ukraine and everything else that they have done simply to have a soulmate in this battle against ISIS. If the U.S. basically wants to do this and do this alone, we can do it. There are other allies, and France and other European allies, who will join us with this. And I think at the end of the day, we need to commit what it is that will take. Our people in the Pentagon have been telling this president over and over again what he needs to do.
Why is he not listening?
Because he doesn't.
Never has.
And look, it is not in Iran's interest to defeat ISIS in Iraq. It gives Iran an excuse to stay in Iraq. The idea that Putin is coming in and helping us in Syria is a fiction and a fantasy. Right. He is bombing our few allies that we have left in Syria.
Because he's trying to support Assad.
And that's the negotiation you have with him. You say to him, you want to be part of this coalition. You stop bombing moderate Syria. Trust has nothing to do with it, Maria. Verification. This is where Russian and American interests coincide. One of the few areas. And by the way, if they're involved in Syria, it's very hard to also be fighting at the same time in Ukraine.
Oh, is Putin going to get out of Ukraine?
He's not going to get out of Ukraine, but he has limited resources.
He trades on conflict. Putin needs conflict in order to look like a tough guy.
He's got enough.
Well, he's a tough guy.
He certainly is a tough guy.
Right.
Yeah, good point. We'll be right back. More from our panel as we look ahead on Sunday Morning Futures right now.